Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Super Show version of the Spin Zone. I am your host, Spin Doc. Normally, I'd be here with my partner Sharpie, but got a family stuff that he's taking care of today. It's all good. Everything is good with him. He's just doing some stuff with his daughter. So I am flying solo today, but we have 6 pitchers. We have the trade deadline review. We have the next version of "You'll Probably Thank Me Later" from for an NFL fantasy guy who I personally think is going to be overvalued. And man, we got a lot to get to. So let's just get right into it. This show is being brought to you on behalf of the Daily Bread Network on YouTube. If you're not, please subscribe there for all of our content. I know my partner Sosa is putting out a whole bunch of video content today, some shorts that we made about the NFC East. Training camp is starting to heat up. I know he's got a Spaces that's going to be blasting off tonight with the start of NFL season. NFL stuff. We're going to have a regular segment on this show next week about NFL stuff leading all the way into NFL season. We got all kinds of stuff to get to. So please do subscribe to that if you want all of that content. Next thing is, if you're like what you hear too, please do follow me at SpinDoc Sports. Share the stream, smash the like button. We do appreciate all of the love. All right. Let's get into some trade deadline madness. It started off a little slow, but oh baby, did this pick up. So at about 3 Eastern, maybe 3:33, 34 o'clock Eastern, the deals just started flying in. And I'm not just talking about my hometown team, who I don't even know if I'm going to recognize the lineup that's on the field tonight for Minnesota, but we'll get to that in a minute. So all kinds of trade deadline deals. What do they mean for the teams? Rather than talk about what happened yesterday from a game perspective, because there was only 3 games, I figured we'd talk about a couple of the big deals that went down. One of the biggest ones from a pitching perspective is that San Diego did AJ Preller just always does such a phenomenal job at the deadline. You got Mason Miller and JP Sears. And, the one thing that I will say about AJ Preller is he goes for it. And when he goes for it, he goes all in. He did pay a big price. He did pay a big price, because giving up Leo DeVries is a steep price. He's actually rated in most prospect rankings in the top 5. He's actually MLB Pipeline's number 3 overall. And so he paid up for him, but Mason Miller is one of the pitchers that the Padres, I personally thought, needed. JP Sears, a lefty, to back up the end of the rotation, and it gave them an abundance of starters. So even if Michael King, who is reportedly is getting ready to come back, even if he's not ready, you have another end of the rotation starter to back end Dylan Cease, who almost got traded himself. And Nick Pivetta, Yu Darvish, who supposedly, like, if you look at his starts too, probably isn't going to go more than 5 innings in most starts. So you do actually have a pretty good return here with 2 guys in the rotation. So the other part with Mason Miller is, the one rumor was that because Cease's contract is up next year, the Padres are not expected to be in on the sweepstakes to acquire him. He'll get a big payday. Is that there has been talk about extending Mason Miller, trying to stretch him out into a starter. For a guy that throws 100, I'm not sure if you want to do that. I think that you might kill his effective, or you might kill his career longevity, but that's a different story. So that was one of the big trades. The other one that was involved, actually most trades involved my team, the Twins. Johan Duran, that happened before the deadline, but going to the Phillies needed bullpen help in the worst possible way. Duran was one of my favorite Twins pitchers, one of the coolest entrances in all of baseball when in Minnesota. I hope they give him a cool entrance where we had a whole bunch of flame graphics go around the building and the lights in the stadium were turned off and everybody turned on their phones and lit it up. It was just a really cool entrance. So I'm not unhappy with the return that we got. I actually do like Eduardo Tate, even though he's probably about 2 or 3 years away from being in MLB. And Mick Abel has had some starts this year. We actually talked about him on the show before a few times. He's been very, very inconsistent, but does have elite MLB stuff. So the other prospect, Painter, who was the number 5 or 6 prospect in all of MLB, that's what the Twins originally wanted. That was never going to happen for a reliever. So I guess I can't be like horribly upset. The other one that I'm interested to see, and actually thought it was a pretty good addition, even though I think the Rangers overpaid for him, was Merrill Kelly, going to Texas from Arizona in full sell mode as well. And they got a guy who has been a good starter. He hasn't really been like much of a great strikeout guy, but he's 36 years old. He's a pending free agent, but he's got a 3.22 ERA and will actually give the Rangers a nice trio of guys to rely on in a playoff series, because you got DeGrom, you got Evaldi, and you got Merrill Kelly. So you got 3 veteran pitchers. So if the Rangers do make the playoffs this year, they could be a team to watch. Just when you do have 3 veteran starters like that you can count on in a short playoff series, it's good stuff. So I think that they overpaid, because I'm not sure that I would have given up Cole Drake, but I do like a lot of what Merrill Kelly has done this year. So he'll be the 3rd starter for them, and he will be in the regular rotation. Like I said, if they make the playoffs, could definitely be they could be a sneaky playoff team. They really could. One trade that I wasn't so high on was the Blue Jays getting Shane Bieber from the Guardians. He's coming back from Tommy John surgery, and I don't know. Bieber doesn't really do it for me. He doesn't really do it for me from a strikeout perspective. He doesn't really do it. I mean, the guy's had a great career, but coming off of Tommy John at his age, I'm just not sure that that's the piece that they're missing in their rotation. So wasn't a huge get for me, especially when the guy that gave up, Carl Steven, was Toronto's number 5 overall prospect. He was like he might have been top 100. I think top 75, maybe something like that. So probably a little bit too rich for my blood for a guy who is supposedly ready to come back, but who is coming off of Tommy John surgery. So, and then the other one was I was interested to see what the Red Sox did. I see Roger in the chat talking about them wanting Joe Ryan. They wanted Joe Ryan. They wanted Dylan Cease. They needed a starter. Dustin May, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. He can be a dependable starter. I'm not sure that he's a guy that you're going to count on for 6 innings on a regular basis, but he is a guy that does have some decent stuff. So I know he was like their 3rd or 4th option when it came to trading for starting pitching, but I was interested to see as well what exactly the Twins were going to do with Joe Ryan, because his contract expires this year, but he is arbitration eligible. So, but with all the other deals that they made, from what I understand, the Twins had a pretty high price tag placed on him and do plan to try to re-sign him. I mean, we actually kind of have to, because after yesterday, and this is a true fact, is that we have two players who are locked up under contract next season: Pablo Lopez and Byron Buxton, and that's it. That's our entire list. Now, obviously, we're going to sign, I'm sure, a lot of the guys that we call up and prospects. But as of today, the Minnesota Twins have two players under contract next year: Byron Buxton and Pablo Lopez. So we'll see what happens. We'll also see who happens to be owning the Twins. I firmly believe that plus the Correa trade, it means that a sale of the Twins is probably pretty imminent and will probably happen in the offseason. I am totally fine with that. Carl Pohlad, who was the original owner of the Twins, who bought it from Calvin Griffin back when they were the Washington Senators, is that, and they moved to Minnesota. Carl Pohlad was a pretty competent owner, helped build our World Series teams in '87 and '91. His sons ain't it. And so I'm all that debt talk aside, I'm very, very glad that the Pohlad family is getting out of the sports ownership business in Minnesota, and really hope that we can hit a home run like the Timberwolves did when we got A-Rod and Lore to take over for Glenn Taylor. That to me would be a huge win for us. And so I do think that a lot of those moves were the Twins just basically saying this is going to be a new era in Twins baseball regardless. So we're going to get rid of everybody who is not a long-term fit here. We don't see as a long-term fit here. And I would guess that Rocco Baldelli is gone after this season. Whenever new owners step in, I would expect the team to get sold. I'm not sure if we'll get a new general manager, but the front office had marching orders to basically just gut the team from a payroll perspective to, I think, make them look attractive to a buyer. So I would expect that you'll see some news coming out very, very soon about a potential buyer for the Minnesota Twins. And I would expect that a sale would probably be finalized sometime in the offseason. So, all right, that will do it for the trade deadline talk. And we got 6 pitchers to get to, so we are going to get right into it. And I see who said, "What's up to Roger?" Said, "How about that Joe Ryan to Boston?" Yeah, they. I know the Twins put a high price tag on Ryan. I know they said that they were basically open for business on everybody but Lopez and Buxton. But I do think that they plan to go to arbitration with Ryan in the offseason. So, all right, we got 6 pitchers to talk about. There's a whole bunch of guys going tonight. So, as always, if you don't hear me talk about the pitcher that you want to hear, please do put it in the chat along with any other questions or comments that you might have. So, first guy we're going to talk about is my buddy. Last year, he had his own list for guys that I wouldn't bet on. But this year, he's been very, very friendly to me. I've cashed him multiple times already. Carlos Rodon, the lefty, striking guys out at 27.9%, walking guys at 8.9%. He gets the Marlins, who made a few deals of their own yesterday. And we have a 5.5 or a 6.5, depending on where you look. The best 5.5 I could find earlier today was -145 with a plus money under, and like I said, it hovers between 5.5 and 6.5, depending on where you look. So you look at this Marlins projected lineup, which after trading Sanchez yesterday, now sits at 1 lefty and 8 righties. So you can see the disparity for Rodon with striking out lefties and righties. That is true, not to the same degree, but true at home as well. And with Rodon, we're always looking for chase, always looking for chase, because he does spend a very low 45.8% of his time in the zone. And when guys do chase, he only allows 44.6% zone or chase contact, which is almost 11% under MLB average. So in this Marlins lineup, we do only have one guy that chases above league average in Ramirez. Now, we do have a few guys that have very, very poor chase contact. We have 5 of those, but we only have one guy that chases above league average with Ramirez. And when he does, his contact isn't terrible and his strikeout percentage isn't terrible. And his strikeout percentage against lefties is actually pretty good. So I couldn't put him down for any more than a half, especially being at home. Now, as far as the rest of the guys go, the crew that chases at league average or close to it. Stowers, I would expect to strike out, even though I actually would not be opposed to a Stowers home run prop today. He's obviously been cooking since the All-Star break. And the one knock on Rodon always has been giving up home runs. So I think a Stowers home run prop might have some value. I also think that he almost assuredly strikes out. And then Winkler at the bottom of the lineup also is a strikeout candidate. So when I look at these potential strikeout candidates, he doesn't chase, but I also think that Hernandez is a very, very high strikeout candidate. So if they're going to bat him in the top 4, I do have him for a 1+. Now, with the other thing with Rodon is that because two righties, he does go 4-seam slider change, but the change isn't used nearly as much. So I'm also looking for a whiff percentage to the slider. League average for a hitter is about 33%. And you see that only 2 of them, Hernandez and Winkler, are significantly above that. Rodon has a decent fastball. He can run up to 96, even sometimes 97, but it's not a dominating fastball. He's not a guy that's going to get you with his 4-seamer, as you can see by the 22.6% whiff rate. And his put away rate is, which means that's actually the pitch that he uses to get you, is even lower than that. So I do look for whiff percentage to a slider as a nice little bonus. And again, I see Hernandez and I see Winkler. Those are ones that for me are pretty easy strikeout candidates. I also think that Stowers' overall contact and his whiff percentage is, I can very easily see Stowers bat 3 times, and 2 of those, one's a homer and one's a strikeout. I can very, very easily see that happening, especially if he's batting anywhere in the top 6 as projected. So, and then, as far as the rest of them go, there really only are a couple dead spots in this lineup: Edwards, Lopez, and Sonoja. So Edwards, I'm sure, will lead off, and I'm sure won't strike out. Sonoja has been ridiculously high contact all season. So Lopez is a guy where, like, even though I put him as a 0.25, there's like a potential that Rodon could get him, but I would still say it's relatively low, especially because he doesn't chase that much and does have high chase contact. So if this is the lineup that the Marlins happen to run, I'm really not seeing any more than 6. So now the question then becomes, do you want to pay -145, -150-ish, somewhere in that range for a guy who is going to face a lineup probably loaded with righties, and who is also going to face a team that only has 2 of these 9 guys that have a whiff percentage that is way above average to a slider, which is his primary out pitch. I'm not 100% sure that I can trust Rodon tonight. I for sure don't want over 6.5. I can tell you that for certain. It's probably going to be one that I'm just going to pass on. And the reason why I don't want under 5.5, even though it's plus money, is, and why I also don't want to pay heavy juice for under 6.5, is that if he does go deeper into the game, which as of this moment, his outs are projected at 17.5, which is pretty normal for him. 6 innings, there is a chance that he does face both Hernandez and Winkler 3 times. And so that could mean potential for multiple strikeouts. So you kind of have a top and bottom heavy lineup for the Marlins. You have 3 potential dead spots with Lopez, Edwards, and Sonoja. And then you have 3 high K spots with Hernandez, Stowers, and Winkler. And so any one of those high contact guys could strike out 2 times. And the 3 guys who are low strikeout candidates could just go over and not have any. So overall, this is probably going to be a pass for me. I do think that the line is set pretty correctly where it's at, and 6 to me seems like the most likely total. So I'm not a huge fan of wanting to try to pay exorbitant juice either for like an under 6.5 if you have this many high potential strikeout guys in the lineup. So, uh, Solo Frey, I see your question, and we will get to that in just a moment. That's not one of the pitchers that we're talking about. However, I do have some thoughts on that I will come back to in just a little bit. All right, so that is Carlos Rodon. Next up, Lefty Brigade, Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray gets the Mets technically on a back-to-back. The trade deadline kind of made it not like a true like time between starts back to back, but Robbie Ray, the lefty, does get the Mets. He's striking guys out at 25.5% clip and walking guys at 9.9. This line is about what I expected it to be as well. You got it heavily over, or somewhat heavily juiced over at 5.5 at -146, and a under at plus money. Now, Robbie Ray faced the Mets back on July 26th. And he pitched just under 6 innings, only struck out 3, gave up 5 hits, 2 earned runs. Now, interestingly enough, the books typically do not adjust a guy on a back-to-back against the same team, even if they're going from road to home, or sorry, home to road, which can be the toughest situation for a pitcher to go back-to-back. Now, even though he only got 4, Robbie Ray is 5-5. Getting 6+ strikeouts in his last 10, and is 3-1 at this number in that same time frame. Meaning, when he set at 5.5, he is 3-1. He's only been set at 5.5 a handful of times throughout the entire season. So the fact that they brought Robbie Ray down, and he's down at DraftKings, he's down at FanDuel, he is still at a 6.5 on BetMGM, but most places do have him at a 5.5. And that's a number that I'm coming up with a lot here, because the past history says 5.5 is probably the right number. I also want to see what lineup the Mets run, because the Mets made several additions yesterday, one of them being Cedric Mullins, who I do have in the projected lineup. And even though it's lefty-lefty, I would expect him to be in. Now, said Mullins, again, even though it's lefty-lefty, does have a pretty good past history against Robbie Ray, only striking out 2 out of 12 times that he's faced him. So you look at this overall lineup, and I'm not sure that they're going to try to run 4 lefties at Robbie Ray. I wouldn't be surprised if you get Nimmo, Soto, and Mullins, probably. So you're probably going to get 3. And actually, so if this is the projected lineup, then what I look for with Robbie Ray is I look for guys who chase, because if you chase against this man, as you can see by his chase contact, his slider can make you miss. 48.6% chase contact, which is about 7% under league average. So we do have 2 Mets in this projected lineup who chase, Marte and Vientos. And Vientos has struck out already against Robbie Ray, small sample size. I would be shocked if he didn't strike out again if he's in the lineup. 49.7% chase contact is bad, and he chases above league average. Marte is different, because Marte has faced Ray a whole bunch of times, has chase contact right about league average, but and Ray's gotten him basically, I mean, the strikeout percentage is 32.1, but basically in half the games, if you go by games, in half the games he's faced Ray, he struck out. In half the games, he hasn't. And so you figure Ray's going to face him 3 times, because his outs prop is set at a 17.5. So that's the reason why he was put at a half. Now, the problem that I have with trying to go over on this one is that if this is the lineup that they run, is that there aren't a whole lot of super high strikeout candidates. In fact, it's Vientos and Alvarez, and that'd be about it. So I also don't like the fact that Ray was dropped after the back-to-back, which you typically don't see. I do want to see where the final line settles on after it's released, after lineup is released, because you do have a whole multitude of options that the Mets can put out there. So right now I have a lean on the under for Robbie Ray, on under 5.5 or 6.5 on either one. I think that he either eclipses both, or I think that he doesn't get to either one. So I think that you're looking at 5 or 7. There's not a whole lot of in between for me. I do think though that if this is the lineup that they run and this line stays at a 5.5, I might be willing to take a shot on the under here, just because of the people that are in this lineup is that you don't have a whole lot of chase. You only have 2 guys that chase. Now, of the guys that chase at league average, you have Lindor and you have Alonso, who have very, very good chase contact. You also have Alvarez and Ced Mullins. Alvarez, that you can live with a strikeout if this is the lineup that they run. Ced Mullins has great past history against him. So there's just a lot of chase contact in this lineup, and you do have some disciplined hitters. So coming home in this spot with the adjustment, I think it's under or nothing, but I am looking to see what the final lineup makeup of the New York Mets happens to be. All right, that'll do it for Robbie Ray. Let's talk about my guy. It's been a while since I have gotten to talk about Big Jack. Jack Flaherty, the righty, is striking guys out at a 29.7% clip. He's walking guys at a 9.5% clip. He gets Philadelphia today. And we got a 6.5 at plus 102 with a lightly juiced under 6.5. Now, for those of you that are in VIP, you know my thoughts on Jack Flaherty. It's been the same since the start of the season, is that if there's chasers, he'll get there. If there's not chasers, it's tough. The reason for this is because Jack Flaherty does not have an overpowering or dominating fastball. His fastball only averages 93 to 94 miles an hour, and it only has, as you can see, a 17.6% whiff percentage, which is almost 10%, or about 8%, sorry, under pitcher average. And his overall zone contact, when he goes zone with his fastball, his zone contact is as you can see, 82.6, which is okay, but his fastball zone contact is ridiculously high. It doesn't make guys miss with the fastball. The whole point of the four-seamer for Jack is to set up his curve and his slider, which are wicked. So the curve more so. But if you're going to chase against this man, you have a potential to strike out. So we look at this Phillies lineup and we see 4 lefties and 5 righties. And oh, am I hoping that this is what they run, because you have Harper, Castellanos, Real Muto, Kemp, and new addition who's projected to be in, Harrison Bader. So you only have 2 guys in the entire lineup that don't chase. One of them being Kyle Schwarber, who is always a strikeout candidate because of how he bats. And Flaherty has already gotten him 8 times in his career. So let's talk about the chasers first and foremost. So 5 chasers. 5 is usually my delineation point. If I got 5 guys that chase above the average, I'm strongly looking at an over. What I'm also looking at for Jack Flaherty is that at a 6.5 line, he when he's been at a 6.5, and also if you look at the overall past history, it doesn't really say that he should be at a 6.5 on the road against this team. 15 strikeouts and 66 plate appearances, 22.7% strikeout percentage. That doesn't mean that when you've been hovering at a 5.5 to a 6.5, that doesn't usually mean that they should bump you up, even though he has hit 7+ in 5 of his last 6, actually. So I do think that the line is correct, but with this many chasers, even though you got some guys with some really, really poor strikeout history, he's got really poor strikeout history against, like Castellanos, like Real Muto, 1 for 21 combined. The difference here is that they all chase this year. And this is a departure for a few of them from previous seasons. So if Bader is in the lineup too, he chases and has poor chase contact. So I'm really hoping for Kemp and Bader at the bottom, because I think that's 2 strikeouts easily. I think that it can even be 3 combined between the 2 of them. Even though he's only gotten Harper 1 out of 6 times, I still, with the amount Harper's chasing this year, which is one of the highest in his career, is that I think that he can get Harper. I Also think that he can easily get Schwarber's, and as you can see, he's got great pass history, and the chase contact for Trey Turner isn't that great either. So you got in the top three, you could have 3 strikeouts. You could even possibly have 4. In the bottom 3, you could have 2 strikeouts, possibly 3. His innings prop, even though his overall innings prop is at a 16.5, which is down slightly from a 17.5. What you also have is you have his hits and his earned runs haven't moved, but his strikeouts are up. What that usually tells me is that they do think that there's at least a thought amongst the books that this is going to be a lot of pitches thrown to get guys at the plate and record strikeouts versus guys getting quick outs in the field. So I'm leaning pretty heavily on the over here for Flaherty. The guys that I want in, if I'm gonna be in on it, are I want Schwarber, and Schwarber, Harper, Turner. I'm sure we'll get, but I want Kemp and I want Bader. It would be nice if Real Muto wasn't catching and we get Marchand. I highly doubt that happens, but those are the 2 guys that I want at the bottom. You give me that, and that's 5 chasers, and that's enough for me to go with Big Jack. So. And Sharpie's in the house. Sharpie, what's up, my guy? Sharpie is in the house. If you don't follow at Sharpie's bets, I've told you before, we can't be friends. Sharpie also saying they dropped his outs, and last time they did that, 5 innings, 9K. Hey, I didn't even see your comment, man. That's exactly what I said, is that there's been a history when they drop Flaherty's outs, but don't. Then when they drop his outs and raise his Ks like that, what that usually means is that he murders guys at the plate, but racks up his pitch count doing it, and that's what causes the outstrap. Because you look at his earned runs and his hits have hovered between 4.5. There's been a few 5.5s in there. It's at 4.5, and there's even juice on both sides. You look at his earned runs, which is hovered between 1.5 and 2.5, and it's at 2.5, but there's pretty heavy juice on the under. So it's indicating exactly what Sharpie and I are saying, is that he's going to have a shorter start, but he's going to K a whole bunch of guys. So this is clearly an overlook for me for Flaherty, especially if we get this lineup. Please, please, please give me 5 chasers because I will be in. Cover Kings in the house. Thank you for joining, saying Hunter Brown 5Ks and Logan Gilbert 6Ks at -135. So that's a alt strikeout parlay from Cover Kings. If you're interested in that, we're actually going to be talking about both those guys in just a second. All right. Next up, speak of the devil, Hunter Brown. Hunter Brown, the righty, is striking guys out at a 30.8% clip, walking guys at 7.9%. He gets the Red Sox today, and we do have a line for Hunter Brown of 6.5 at +108 with an under 6.5 at -138. All right. So here's what I'm seeing for Hunter Brown, because by the numbers, and you can tell by the chart that I make, because remember, I do these charts before I see the lineup. By the chart, he should murder this team. By the metrics, he should murder this team. But we're getting a 6.5, and we're getting a very, very bettable 6.5. Now, Sharpie says it best. You can read this here. This just screams trappy to me. And okay, I'm glad that Sharpie and I are on the same side and the same wavelength for this one. Why on earth is this a bettable 6.5? And why now? Why now is the under heavily juiced? I realize that Brown is only hit 50, has hit 7+ in 2 of his last 4 starts. I realize that, and he struggled to hit it against one team for sure that he should have murdered in the Athletics, but against this lineup, this should be a literal murder. You have Hunter Brown, who is allowing a gaudily low 78.7% zone contact, and you have 4 of the 9 hitters who have terrible zone contact. You also have a whole bunch of guys in Bregman, Duran, in Yoshida, in Toro, a whole bunch of guys that take pitches in the zone. And when Brown gets strike one, 51%, or when Brown gets ahead of hitters, 51% strikeout percentage. You look at their K percentage for some of these guys over the last 15 days, it's in the 30s. It's just ridiculous. So by the zone contact numbers alone, he should torch this team. And I have, as you can see, the math that I did before I saw the line come out says 7.5, and I was actually wanting a 7.5. I actually wanted a 7.5 with the over juice at like minus 125, because if that were the case, I would probably be looking to do blast off alt overs for Hunter Brown. Now, I don't want any part of this one. I can't take the under on a Red Sox team that has this poor of zone and also that has, if they are going to chase, while Brown doesn't have the best chase contact stuff, you can see how horrible that is too. You can also see that even in limited plate appearances, 5 Ks and 13 plate appearances, and now we're getting a 6.5. It just doesn't make any sense. It just makes no sense to me. This should be like the easiest over in the world to bet. And that, how I look at it, is that means I don't want anything to do with it. In no world am I taking an under on the Red Sox against Hunter Brown. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it hits. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes at 6. I really wouldn't. So I want nothing to do with this over. This is probably just going to be a total throwaway for me. And Sharpie saying Boston K percentage versus righties, 25% last 2 weeks with a 60% win rate to the 6.5 line. It should be minus 150. Listen to this man. He speaks the truth. I was shocked. I actually refreshed my screen and I'm like, you sure you don't like plus 100 on the over 6.5? I'm like, you sure you don't mean 7.5? Are you sure? Nope. 6.5 everywhere. I use Covers, which gathers all the stuff together in one place for all the major books. And when I saw it, I went to each book individually because I thought it was wrong. I'm like, did they just not update or something? And I'm like, wow, that is crazy. So Hunter Brown to me seems very, very trappy. It would not shock me at all if he finishes at 6. It really wouldn't. JT Eel in the house, thank you for joining and welcome in. Saying I was supposed to be on Singer, damn it, because Roger said it too. Singer is torching the Braves. Prop wasn't out yet. Game started. That was a super early game. Like normally you only see that with the Cubs and Wrigley, but yeah, going back to Hunter Brown, I just want no part of it. I am so far away off that man. All right, next one up. Joe Ryan, who will be backed up in the outfield and the infield by somebody, a couple guys. I don't know who, not after yesterday, but Joe Ryan is striking guys out at a 28.9% clip, walking guys at a 5.1% clip. He gets the Guardians with a 5.5 line for him. This is probably about what I expected given his past history against this team and just given, honestly, kind of the chaos that the Twins are in right now. So this is about what I expected, even though Joe Ryan over his last 10 is 6-4 to this number. When he's been set at 5.5, he's hit it both times in his last 10. That was against the Rays where he got 8, and that was against the Blue Jays where he struggled a little bit, but he still got to 6. The earned runs being down at 1.5 is a little interesting for being on the road. Hits are set at 4.5. You got pretty much everything where it should be here. And yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you, Sharpie. I don't know if I'll be able to get there on Joe Ryan for the over, but my initial lean here, even though the raw math comes out to 5.25, if this is the lineup that they're going to run, I'm not opposed to taking a shot on the over here, even with this horrendous past history. What I'm probably more looking to do with Joe Ryan is if they're going Juan Martinez Ramirez, especially because he only has struck them out 4 times in 48 plate appearances. His hits and earned runs are normal. So what I'm probably looking to do here would be to wait and try to get in live after the first inning because I can see him retiring the side 1, 2, 3 here and there being no strikeouts because after that, as you can see by the very colorful 4 through 9, there's a whole bunch of K potential in this lineup. Ryan spends 55.5% of his time in the zone. That's one of the highest marks among all pitchers going today. And you do have a whole bunch of guys after the top 3 who have a whole host of terrible zone contact. In fact, Santana and Naylor are the only 2 in that bottom 6 that are over league average in zone contact, and Ryan has gotten them a combined 5 out of 11 times. So I'm not sure that I want to get in pregame on this one. I think what I want to do is roll the dice that he doesn't strike anybody out in the first inning and goes 1, 2, 3 with Kwan, Ramirez, and Martinez. Because as you can see, all 3 of those guys are exceptionally low strikeout candidates and are probably guys he's not going to get. What I can probably get on that one is either a better price on the over 5.5 or maybe even a heavily juiced over 4.5 that I can use and just put a straight unit on without paying the juice. All of those things I personally think have more value than trying to play this pregame. Now, if Kwan, Martinez, and Ramirez are not the top 3, then that's going to change the whole equation because the only other guy that could be in that top 3 that would make me want to try to run the same thing probably could be Santana. Like I wouldn't be opposed to trying to run that same play with Santana. But for now, what I'd like to do because of the absolutely hideous zone contact and strikeout percentage that everybody below Ramirez has, and even Santana, I think is a 50-50 shot. What I'd much rather do is wait and what I'm banking on is that he only faces 3 guys in the first inning, gets them all out, no strikeouts, and then I can get a better line live because all 3 of those top 3 are exceptionally low strikeout candidates. So that's what I'm doing. And Sharpie saying, yeah, live bet after 1. Yep, that to me, I think is probably the best way to play. Yeah, 75 to 100 up front and hammer it live. Yep. I would agree wholeheartedly with you with Sharpie on this one. I think that is the way to play this one. I would not. I'm probably going to be out pregame. I understand the look, trying to get in for a little bit pregame just in case, because what you also have, this is the projected lineup. If let's just say Kwan and Ramirez, I'm making this up, get on, and then he happens to face Manzardo and Arias in the first inning. He could finish with 27, 28 pitches in the first inning, but also 2 strikeouts. And then your whole live bet kind of blows up. So I'm probably just gonna wait. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm looking to get in live on Joe Ryan today, if anything. All right. The last pitcher for the day, and then I'll go to a few of the other comments in the chat before we move on to fantasy football related items, is Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert, the righty, is striking guys out at an absolutely absurd 36%, walking guys at 6.2%. He gets the Rangers tonight. His line is rightfully set at a 7.5 with plus money on the over. This is an over or nothing spot. I will just say it straight up right now. You don't fade Logan Gilbert at home. Just don't. Just if you're thinking about it, don't. You can quote any stat you want in the world to me, and Logan Gilbert at home is kind of like saying well, because of this and this and this, I might want to fade Tarek Skubal at home. Nope, you don't. You don't, and you're not going to. So Logan Gilbert, get a projected lineup of 5 righties, 4 lefties. And the big thing for me, what I'm looking at is over half of this lineup has a first pitch swing percentage under league average. Why does that matter? Number one is because Logan Gilbert operates in the zone 50.2% of the time, which is about 2% above league average. And the other thing is, look at that bottom right. When ahead in the count, there are only about three, I think, because I don't even think Scooble's over 50%. There might be two or three regular starters in Major League Baseball that when they're ahead in the count have a 50% strikeout percentage. Some are in the high 40s, some are in the 30s, somewhere or like high 30s, low 40s, some are even in the high 40s. 50% when he gets ahead in the count, and you have so many guys that take pitches in the zone. Rowdy Tellez, who I would expect to be in, new addition. Higashioka, Carter and Langford are average. You got Jock Peterson, who is under average. You got Smith, who's average. The only guys that swing are Seager, Simeon, and Garcia. And you can see what Gilbert's numbers against Adolis Garcia are. So there's all kinds of potential here for these guys to go down in the count. And you just can't do that against Logan Gilbert. He is outright nasty when he gets ahead in the count. The other thing that I'm looking for here is that his chase stuff is just pretty ridiculous. 38.8% with 6 guys under for chase contact. I realize that there's more than a few guys who don't chase, but still, you have this many guys taking this many pitches in the zone, and man, it's I want 7. I want 7 for sure. I'm not, because I see Sharpie mentioning looking at 7 hooked to an under 3.5 team total. Yep, that you can do that too. Berg saying Gilbert better. Berg from he's in VIP with us saying Gilbert better not get ump ball again. Yeah, you're telling me. He got a little ump ball that screwed us out of our last one with Gilbert. And Gilbert 0-2 on an 0-2 count, 2-2 count, 64% strikeout percentage. It's probably one of the best you've ever seen, because it's probably one of the best ever in Major League Baseball. You just can't take against this guy in the zone. And this projected lineup, if this is what we get, almost all these guys take. So this is a very, very clear look at the over here for me. I'm not really looking to do anything else with Logan Gilbert, except, like Sharpie mentioned, maybe bring him down to 7 and try to hook him to something else. But you get this many guys that take, and you have all kinds of potential for strikeouts in this lineup. All right. Before we move on to fantasy football related, I just want to get to a few of the other comments in here. Cover King says Astros and Brown going to be fired up today. He gets me 5. I mean, I can see him getting 5. The line says it's going to be tough to get to 7. Berg saying the Reds and Braves have to travel to the racetrack tonight for the game tomorrow, hence the early start time. Oh yeah, that makes sense. That made sense. So, all right. Let's talk about You'll Probably Thank Me Later, my fantasy football segment that's going to be new, that has been going on this show. And I have shared 3 guys that I thought were undervalued in Bryce Young, in Bashil Tutin for the Jags, and I've also shared, and Josh Downs for the Colts. I shared my first guy last week who I thought was overvalued with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I have another potentially overvalued guy this week. This guy is a guy who has been an elite running back. It's been a guy that's actually won me a few championships in past years. This is a guy who I think, with a combination of injuries, with a combination of personnel changes, with a combination of a whole bunch of different things, I think will be overvalued this year. Word is starting to get out, so if you're drafting pretty soon, he might fall to where he probably should be. But for people that drafted or like earlier, I think he's overvalued. I actually think that most of this entire offense I have a feeling that this entire offense is going to be overvalued, with the exception of one guy. So it pains me to do it. But again, this is not a guy that I'm telling you that you should not draft. This is just a guy that I'm saying I think will be a little too high for what the results would indicate. And so You'll Probably Thank Me Later today is Joe Mixon from the Houston Texans. All right, let's talk about Mr. Mixon. So Mixon has been a workhorse throughout his career. He's got almost 1,900 carries. He probably will go over, he has potential to go over 2,000 this year. That's third among active running backs behind only Zeke Elliott, who is still active, and Derrick Henry. He did just turn 29 years old, so he's not quite at that 30 mark yet, but his expected production at the age 29 season is about 70% of his peak, and his production last year dropped considerably after week 10. Now, there were some injuries with the Texans. I will freely admit that. But when you compare Mixon last year, weeks 1 through 9 versus weeks 10 through 18, his yards per contact per attempt dropped by almost a full yard. His missed tackles forced dropped, and his rushing grade from PFF dropped from 78.5 to 64.4, which was one of the biggest drops among regular starting running backs. So he did bounce back in the playoffs, though, and averaging 4.5 yards per carry. But in the regular season, towards the end, he did show some signs of the miles on the tires adding up. Now, the other thing we have with Joe Mixon is that this Texans offensive line is just absolutely abysmal. It rated dead last in PFF's preseason offensive line grades. Shaq Mason and Laramie Tunsil, who actually kind of held the line together last year, are both gone. I've seen a couple interviews from their O-line coach about how, they're going to make up for it by like being more nasty this year. They're going to be more nasty. They're going to be mean, and that's great, but that doesn't get you anything in the NFL. It's like, we're going to play hard. We're going to hustle. Okay, well, everybody does that. So talent is talent. And this team didn't really get any better after finishing 24th in adjusted line yards and 31st, almost last, in run block win rate. And that's huge for Mixon. So you add those two things together. Then you have his injury to something. It's unclear as to what is exactly hurt, because the original report was that it was his foot, and that was why he didn't participate in OTAs. And then they assured us he'd be ready for camp. Now he wasn't ready for the start of camp because of an ankle injury. So we don't know if it's been misreported, or if it's both, or if it's his whole leg, or what. The other thing is Joe Mixon, now the latest report is he will miss an extended period of time in camp, possibly all of camp, might not be ready for week 1. So with all of that swirling around him, and the fact that he's missed time in 5 of 8 seasons already, because he is a physical running back. And with you add up that many carries, that poor of an offensive line, what you also have is, and this is the opposite reason is why I recommended Bashil Tutin, because I said, if you have capable backs, you don't add another potential starter, and you don't trade up to draft a guy who plays that same position. The Jags did that with Bashil Tutin. The Texans did it with Woody Marks. They traded up into the 3rd round to draft him. They also signed Nick Chubb. Now, Nick Chubb is a reclamation project. We know that. He's coming off just absolutely tearing his knee like into a bazillion pieces. We know that too. But they added, we're a team that has a bunch of holes on the offensive line and has several holes elsewhere. They added at running back. And the timing of it was right around the time that you were steering reports that Mixon wouldn't be ready for OTAs because of his foot or ankle or something injury. So I'm a big believer in, I put the puzzle pieces together, and the puzzle pieces to me says that Mixon is projected to be drafted as a running back 1, meaning like if you have, like, let's say you take like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson or something like that with your first pick, which you easily can and probably should, and then you go down on the turn and you take Joe Mixon. I think you might be disappointed. What I would rather do is especially in a PPR format for this year, there are in PPR redraft leagues, There are a number of running backs that I would rather have over Joe Mixon. I would rather have Isaiah Pacheco. I would rather have James Conner. I would rather have, even though his offense projects to be horrendous, I might even rather have Ken Walker. I would rather have Bucky Irving, and that's not a homer pick because I didn't mention him first. I would rather have Alvin Kamara than Joe Mixon in a PPR format. In a non-PPR, maybe not so much, but I might even rather take a shot on Omari and Hampton, the rookie, or Ashton Janty, one of the two, than to take Joe Mixon that high. And this is not a knock on Joe Mixon. The guy has been a workhorse. The guy runs like a beast. I love watching him run because he runs mean and he runs nasty, but he's got a lot of miles on his tires. And he's playing behind what it projects to be a horrendous offensive line. And he's got one, maybe two injuries that are possibly going to keep him out. And he's going to be drafted really, really high. So all of that said, all of that combined, I am just not super high on Joe Mixon this year. I think that if you can get him as your second running back, or third's probably too low, second running back, maybe in a non-PPR format, you might be able to take him a little bit sooner, but man, I'm just not feeling it this year. I'm not feeling it for the whole Texans offense outside of Nico Collins, if I'm being quite honest with you. But I'm really not feeling it with Joe Mixon this year. I'm not looking to have a whole bunch of shares of anything with him. So, all right, that will do it for that. We'll go to other looks, sides, totals, etc. today, and we'll get out of here. If you're looking for some money lines on here, as you know, I only give out plus money. I only give out plus money looks. And I also wanted to go back to Solo Free. Talked about, are we fading left-handed pitching against the White Sox? Anderson under 4.5. I am. I'm looking at it. I want to see what their final lineup is because it's always kind of a mixed bag after the top five. And I told VIP this morning is that, there's a difference between being a bad team and being a bad strikeout team. And sometimes people don't get that part. Sometimes they just mix the two together, just intertwine the two and think that if you're a good team, you have a lower potential to strike out. And if you're a bad team, you have a higher potential to strike out. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Solo Free is right. The White Sox, they're not very good. They don't put up runs. They don't get hits, but they don't strike out. And they get a pitcher tonight who is not a strikeout pitcher in the slightest. So we might be getting some value there out in Anaheim for a team going on the road. I for sure need to see a lineup with this one because there's a few guys that could probably ruin it for everybody because they do have a few high strikeout guys in or potential in the lineup. So we'll wait to see, but yes, Solo Free. I am definitely looking at Anderson under 4.5. Got to be the right lineup, but certainly looking at it. All right. If you want some money lines, speaking of, the White Sox has value at plus 116. I think that the Diamondbacks has a little bit of value at plus 105. And the other one, I think that the Blue Jays, or I'm sorry, not the Blue Jays, the Royals have value at plus 134. So those are the ones that I'm looking at tonight. And actually the Rays against the Dodgers has a little bit of value as well, especially with Baz versus Kershaw. I can actually see Kershaw may possibly getting roughed up a little bit. He actually doesn't have that great a history against this projected lineup. A number of guys in this projected lineup. If you're looking for some totals, if you want some afternoon baseball, the under 7 out in Wrigley has a little bit of value, but only a little. That's if you wanted the action. Mariners, Rangers, a little bit more chalkier because of who's on the mound, but the under 7.5 has some value there. And Nats, Brewers under 8.5 has value, and Guardians, Twins under 7 also has value. The Twins team total for sure is probably going to have value because like I said, I'm not even sure I'm going to recognize 2/3 of the guys that are going to be in the lineup. So those are the looks that I would have for that. Sorry, Kid Keon in the house saying thoughts on Ranger Suarez. At first I thought I wanted the over. Tigers have been very strikeout prone lately. Rangers outs are at the normal level, and his earned runs are down at 1.5. I couldn't get there though. I think if you're looking at it, over is the only way to go, and I might even go like over, meaning like if the book like FanDuel has over 5.5 at a just stupid juice, I might just take 7+ if you're going to do anything, or you can put 6+ with something else if you want, but over or nothing for Ranger Suarez. Cover King saying he has a weird feeling that Flaherty shits the bed. I mean, he's done it before on the road, but I'm with Flaherty. I just follow my tried and true chasers. And Sharpie wants looking to back Rodon, Flaherty, Ryan, and Gilbert. That's pretty close to what I'm looking at as well. So, all right, that will do it for the day. Thank you so much to everybody who joined. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Want to say what's up, and thank you to Roger, to Solo Free, Sharpie, Cover Kings, JT Eel, Berg, and I think Kid Keon. So thank you all. Again, this show is brought to you on behalf of the Daily Bread Network on YouTube. Please do subscribe. If you haven't already, smash the like button, give it a share. We appreciate it. Whole bunch more NFL content coming out, whole bunch more stuff for you. We are off for the weekend and back at it Monday. Best of luck in all of your action. See you then.